All right, let's get started. I'm Mandeep Singh, CEO and founder of Mandeeps.com. And today in this webinar, we will be talking about cookie consent, disclosure, and transparency. Specifically, we're talking about our live compliance module, which was just released throughout this presentation and through this webinar. If you have any questions, please use chat to ask them, and I will address them as we go along. So let's get started. We are basically referring our cookies compliance module right here. And live compliance will eventually become a much larger module tackling different compliance issues. But at the moment, it's just focused on cookie consent, disclosure, and transparency, and kind of applies more to GDPR and then CCPA as well, and other privacy acts. All right, so GDPR, let's switch over here. Basically, when it comes to cookies and GDPR, it says there's a couple things we got to do on your site for compliance. And it's right here. To comply with the regulations governing cookies under GDPR, you must do the following. Your users must give consent before you use any cookies, except for strictly necessary cookies. So this is called opt-in. That means you can no longer just have a Google Analytics tracking code on the site out of the box. You can only use the tracking site code if a user explicitly gives you consent that it is okay to go ahead and track. So keep in mind, this is a little bit different than CCPA because GDPR, you have to opt in. CCPA, you can opt out. So slightly difference there. The second part is transparency. You got to give accurate and specific information about why each cookie is used, what it does, and its purpose, in basically plain language before you can get a consent. And number three, which is the reason we were prompted to create this module for one of our clients and then open it up for the community, because we couldn't find a solution out there right now that is actually documenting and storing the consents received from users, which is a requirement from GDPR as well. That whenever you get a consent, you must document it and store it. And allow your users to access the service, even if they refuse cookies. And the other for this purpose is make it as easy for them to withdraw their consent as it was for them to give it in the first place. So live compliance tries to address all these issues. And let's go ahead and right into it. Before I do, live compliance is part of our Plus collection. You can always buy it individually, but it is also packaged in Plus collection along with Live Shield under security and compliance. All right, let's get right here and we will get started. So what I have here is the DNN 9.10.1 default installation. I just created a page called compliance and dropped live compliance module on it. Now, ideally, you would want to have this page not visible in the menu. You would have it admin only. This is just to kind of set configuration on the module. It has nothing to do with the functionality of the consent bar that appears and so forth. So you can put this into an admin only page that is hidden from anybody else. All right, very simple UI. If you want to enable the cookie compliance, you toggle enable. If you want to disable, you toggle disable and the functionality disappears. The first tab talks about the appearance. So if you look at the bottom right here, there's a ribbon bar running. A consent bar running. I can move that consent bar to the top of the site, or I can move it to the bottom left, in which case it appears like this. And I can also move it to the bottom right. So we have 4 different positions. I can do top, bottom, bottom left, bottom right. Now, other than the positioning, we have control over the colors, and I have full control over the colors. I can change the banner color. I can change the button colors. I can change the text color, and I can also change the text color of the button itself. So this allows me to very quickly have the appearance match my branding, my existing site branding and look and feel. And finally, if you notice, there's a cookie consent URL, which this is the URL here called for learn more. Now, if you were to click on this, let's bring up a new website, which is not logged in, anonymous. So date, let's see. Well, I have already probably saved cookies on this one, so it's not coming. Let's another browser. Give me a sec. Yeah. All right. So there it is. If I were to click on learn more, out of the box, it just takes you to the site called cookies and you and what are cookies and so forth. But you can override that URL right here to go to your privacy page or anywhere else you want to go. So that's where you would ideally want to go then take them to learn more about your privacy. I'm just gonna, it seems like there's no way to revert there. So we're gonna have to kind of use these colors that I chose. I think that's better. We'll take that one. Hit update and that's it for appearance. Pretty simple, but it meets all the use case because you can put it in, like I said, anywhere you like. You can have a running at top or bottom, and you can take care of all the colors. Now let's talk about cookies. So out of the box, Live Compliance knows some of the cookies that is always going to be there because you're running on a DNN site, like ASPX Anonymous, .NET New, Request Verification Token, Authentication, and so forth. But one of the coolest features of Live Compliance is it has automatic scanner built in, which means you don't have to go hunt for the cookies that are used on your site. As after you enable the module will start scanning, automatically start scanning your site and looks for any new cookies. And if any cookies are found, it will add them to your dash panel for an administrator to review and annotate. So it will not become visible to the end user until an administrator goes ahead and gives it a category and a description. And to demo that, I have two cookies here today as an example. So this ASP.NET session ID and last page ID. The last page ID is used by DNN. ASP.NET session ID is ASP.NET cookie. And these were picked up by Live Compliance automatically, but they're not being shown to the end user. If I go on settings right here, if I go to the necessary settings, you can see right here, these are settings. Let's refresh the page. That's too pink. So here's the cookies we're showing to end users. Notice we're not showing the last page ID or ASP.NET because these cookies were picked up by Live Compliance automatically. And they will start showing up once an admin goes ahead, reviews the cookies, figure out what they're doing, comes in here, gives it a description, and gives a category. Once it gives it a category, it'll start showing up behind. Now, that does not mean that as an admin, you can't add cookies yourself. You can certainly go ahead and do that too, even though you don't need to anymore because Live Compliance automatically looks at all users who are on your site and figures out what cookies are being exchanged. So it kind of automatically fills this up for you. But as an administrator, if you need to go ahead and add a specific cookie, simply come here, give it a name, description, give it a category, and hit update. Now, this brings us to the second part is, let's say we wanted to do Google Analytics, for example, right? So I can go ahead and do that. And like I said, that is a performance or targeting based cookie, and give it a description. And now I can have some embed code, which is my JavaScript, or it could be any other code like a CSS or whatever you want it to be, that I want it injected on the page only if a user has opted into that category. So I have options to have that code injected at top of the head, bottom of the head, top of the body tag, or the bottom of the body tag. So there's 4 different places where I can put those JavaScript in. And to kind of demonstrate this, I guess we could just quickly do a script alert. So let's hit update. And there's a Google Analytics that I just added. Now, if we go back here and refresh the page, notice I'm not getting any scripts at all because I have not allowed any of the performance cookies. If I go down here, we see there's one Google Analytics, one performance cookie, but I haven't allowed it. Here's all the strictly necessary. Now, strictly necessary cookies are always enabled, and a user cannot disable them. These are the only ones we can put in on the page without user's consent, if you're talking about GDPR. And then I see here, there's Google Analytics. If I turn this on, hit OK, I've not given consent. Notice as soon as I've given consent, my script kicks in, which means Google Analytics is now working behind the scenes. So that's pretty cool. And notice now that I've given consent, it is gone. Every time I refresh the page, the script kicks in, but I don't have any cookie consent banner anymore. So let's talk about that next. How do we allow a user to then opt out or withdraw their consent? Because that was, again, one of the requirements, that it should be just as easy to withdraw your consent as it was to give. That is super easy. What you can do is, if you notice here, I created this called privacy settings. And you can do that in the footer of your site. You can do it in your privacy policy. You can do wherever you want on the site. I'm just using a HTML module here right now, and all I've done is created a link called privacy settings, and I created an on-click event on it, and it basically says live compliance.cookies. And this, of course, is in documentation, so you can copy and paste it. But this allows you to basically put this anywhere on your site, in the footer or elsewhere. If I were to go back to this page where I just accepted that cookie consent, and if I go bottom here, I see that privacy settings. When I click on it, it brings it right back up. And now it is showing me what I agreed to. As you can see right here, I had agreed to performance and strictly necessary cookies. So I can go ahead and turn this off at this point and hit OK. And now if I refresh, you see there's no Google Analytics script being executed because I don't see the alert anymore. So right out the gate, I mean, we've covered a lot of the things that GDPR requires us. And just let's go back really quick and take a look at that. So we've got the consent by clicking OK. By default, it was only strictly necessary unless user opted in. We looked at the transparency, and let's go ahead and demonstrate that one more time. So a user can simply read, and an admin can change this text if they need to. This is the same learn more link we had in the bar running at the bottom, which is configurable. Each cookie, I mean, there's text right here on the top that defines the category, but then each cookie has its own description that they can click on to learn more about what the cookie does. So it has full transparency built in. Let's see what else. Document store, we haven't looked at that, so we'll go ahead and do that in just a second. We did look at the last one, is how they can withdraw their consent. So document store is an automatic process. Let's go back here. Let's go to our module. We have, for an admin, we have a type called logs, and every time anyone consents to one of those cookies, they timestamp it along with their IP address and what cookies they agreed to. And as an admin, you can run this between different date ranges, and then you can also export this out for your compliance team if they ask for it, because that is one of the big things the legal team wants to know, if you're actually storing the data, and if so, can we get a copy of it? And it's right here. So that's it for this module. Simple, effective, does a job, and the biggest feature, I think, in terms of making the admins burden low is the automatic scanner, because half the time we don't realize that we have all these third-party modules that are using so many different cookies, and we're not tracking them. But Live Compliance tracks them automatically, brings up here and keeps aggregating them here, and then an admin can go ahead and investigate who's using that cookie, what is it for, and then annotate it as needed. All right. Any questions I can address? Thanks, Eric. Yep, thanks, David. It's nice and simple. It does a job. We stick to the basics, exactly what it needs to do. It's totally, in terms of appearance, customizable. Can have it do whatever, match your branding and feel. And then the most important was, if you're using a module such as this, then it has to be really compliant. We looked at what's available in the market, and all the modules we looked were doing more or less everything, except they weren't doing a document store part of it. Which is super important. Otherwise, you're still not compliant with GDPR and other regulations. And again, this is iteration number 1. This is our first release of live compliance. So we do have plans to add other features in regards to compliance in live compliance. That's why it has a generic live compliance as its name. And we'll keep adding more features. Any questions I can address? When you switch over to one of these files, the tags, the banner disappears. It appears only when you're in Appearance tab, so you can quickly see the changes you're making as an admin. All right, if there are no other questions, then we'll keep this webinar short. That's all we have. It's super simple. Well, that's it for this short webinar then. Thank you so much for joining me, and I appreciate your time. And you guys have a wonderful day. We'll see you soon in the future. Take care. Bye-bye.